Good morning. My name is James Neider. I'm the Chief of Capital Programs for MBTA, and I'm happy to be here at the TIDC New England Railroad Symposium, second annual. And I'm here to talk a little bit about our challenges going forward. And the main topic of that is going to be capacity building. Capacity building is quite an effort. Is a little bit unknown to a lot of people on the outside, but we spend a lot of time looking to engage new contractors, specifically because the IIJA, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, has created an increase in funding for the MBTA capital program. And with that comes additional contracting, and we have some major projects that are coming up in the near future in the $500 to $1 billion range. And we're trying to attract not only the current folks that we have with SIM, that are SIM members, and others from around the region, the New England region, but we need to get some national firms to come in and participate in our program. And primarily, as an owner, our job is to try to increase the competition that we have for the work that we put out that we need to accomplish. And how do we do that? We reach out to the national associations, the AGC national, as well as, we do work with SIM, which is the Construction Industry of Massachusetts. And then there's a large group of major contractors in the United States that we try to stay connected with. And it's a capacity building effort. And to take that to another level it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of relationship building. And then after you piggyback on that, you have to get them certified and you have to get them pre-qualified. And then that leads to, the next level of involvement, which is disadvantaged business enterprises. And the DBE community is a group of folks that don't always recognize themselves as DBEs. So we do a lot of outreach working with SIM, and we're collaborating with them to look for firms that do certain types of work that are, part of the scopes of the work that we actually let to prime contractors. And then we try to get them interested in getting certified with the state of Massachusetts. And then we have to go through the whole process of getting them pre-qualified to do work for MBTA. And that takes a considerable amount of time and effort as well. Recently as well, we have a lot of state funding in our projects, and we've been stepping up our DEI program, which is another group of smaller firms that we're trying to connect with. And we've been doing some outreach with that. That's been quite successful. We recently also stood up a small business program for MBTA. And that has been a really enjoyable time to, go out and find smaller firms for contracts that are under $3 to $5 million and that are specific, either electrical or structural or specific types of work that we can actually look for firms that could do work with MBTA in the DEI area. And we've had some good success. We have a few things that we have to work through in the near future with bonding for the smaller firms, and how do we get that in the mix so it's easier for them to get a bond to do work with MBTA. I think the other part is, helping them through the process to get pre-qualified with MBTA is we've added some staff, and we're really working hard to walk them through that process. And then, once we do all that team building, you got to continue that momentum. You have to continue to outreach for larger firms in the nation. They plan out probably a year and a half advance on what projects that they'd like to pursue and that kind of fit their wheelhouse. And so you have to be out there sharing with them, what workload that we have, for the next 2 or 3 years, so they can really plug into the types of work that we'd like to see them compete for. And then again, we need to have bringing in those national firms and others from, outside of just Massachusetts, but the New England region really helps bring in relationships that these other firms have with DBE firms, as well as DEI firms. So I think we're on the right track. I think we're moving in the right direction. We're going to have a number of outreach sessions in the next 2 to 3 months here. We have to just continue to have that evolve over time. And the goal is to have, a strong and healthy group of contractors that show interest in work at MBTA, and that they're very competitive, And that's good for our taxpayers and the legislature that provides funding, as well as the federal funding that we get. So thank you for having me today, and I look forward to questions in the near future as part of the symposium.
My name is Mike Muller, and I'm the Executive Director of Commuter Rail for the MBTA. And today I'm going to discuss the owner and operator perspective and the challenges associated with implementing a capital program on an active passenger railroad while maintaining excellent customer service. Here's a brief overview of the MBTA's commuter rail network by the numbers. The MBTA and its commuter rail operator, Keolis Commuter Services, operate 14 routes in Massachusetts and into Rhode Island for a total of around 400 route miles. The service consists of 502 trains per weekday and 235 trains per weekend day, serving a total of 143 stations, with a few stations temporarily closed at a given time for construction or repairs. The revenue fleet consists of 420 coaches and 90 diesel-powered locomotives. But the most important numbers are the riders. Commuter rail is currently averaging about 83,000 riders per weekday, and that's about 65% of pre-pandemic ridership, which was about 126,000 riders per weekday. The MBTA has an aggressive capital investment program that includes projects of varying size, priority, and benefit to the agency and its customers. As the graphic shows, projects addressing state of good repair and accessibility needs are among the highest priority projects because they are generally driven by safety and reliability considerations, as well as legal and regulatory requirements, and therefore generally take precedence over more discretionary investments. These projects are deemed essential first because providing safe, reliable service that is equitable and inclusive is part of the agency's core mission, but also because failure to meet standards and requirements around safety, reliability, and accessibility can result in service disruptions and station closures. Modernization and expansion projects are in the nice-to-have category because although these projects make important improvements to assets and service, and they're often things that our customers and stakeholders want, they are secondary considerations to the essential projects. An example of a major modernization project that's underway is the installation of automatic train control, a key component to our positive train control system, which is both a critical safety system and a federal requirement. And finally, we have the transformation program, which includes elements of all of these project types and aims to transform the current diesel-powered traditional peak-driven commuter rail system into an electrified high-frequency regional rail network. While executing the transformation program includes some major infrastructure expansion projects that are not included in the other categories, it also includes a number of state of good repair, accessibility, and modernization projects as prerequisites in order to fully realize the envisioned transformation. So these capital programs are overlapping and complementary. So how does this important and ambitious capital program interface with day-to-day operations? That's one of the biggest challenges we face from the owner-operator perspective. Most of the projects in the commuter rail capital program require service outages of some span and duration. For example, you can't replace an old signal system with a new one while you're operating revenue service, so that requires a suspension of service to varying degrees on the affected portion of the railroad. Depending on the nature of the work, capital projects can require single-track outages, which allow us to continue operating service, but with reliability and performance impacts, or full or partial line outages for weeks or months at a time. And station construction projects often require multi-year closures to the affected station. One of the inherent challenges of choosing and prioritizing competing capital needs is that deferral of state of good repair projects is potentially consequential to operating service. But the state of good repair needs are also hugely expensive and can consume a disproportionate share of capital resources for years at a time. The realities of limited funding and bandwidth also create dilemmas and force trade-offs between multiple must-do projects, and hard choices about deferring projects risk future service impacts. Unfortunately, the projects that are most often deferred are critical mega projects that would otherwise gobble up most of the capital program and crowd out other important projects. Choosing not to fund mega projects in favor of funding a greater number of projects usually means funding design only and delaying construction, and this also means prioritizing some non-essential and less beneficial projects. One of the biggest challenges to balancing capital project delivery with operating service is the impact of closures on ridership and customer experience. Service outages and closures are disruptive to our customers, and that factors into their commuting and travel decisions. As more pre-pandemic riders are gradually returning to commuter rail, they are greeted with service outages and closures that can discourage riders from choosing commuter rail and potentially limit the ridership growth needed to justify major capital investments. So what are we doing to mitigate the inherent conflicts of implementing an aggressive capital program while continuing to operate commuter rail service and promote ridership growth? First, we've implemented a robust customer communication strategy that gives riders appropriate advance notice of upcoming outages and closures while being transparent about costs and benefits. Second, on the capital funding front, we have an aggressive strategy that pursues all of the federal and state funding resources available, especially for unfunded mega projects that are critical to the state of good repair. And finally, we're working to simplify and standardize our station designs to prioritize ease of construction and potentially lower costs. The objective of all of these strategies is to find innovative ways of successfully implementing our ambitious capital program to transform commuter rail while prioritizing service reliability and customer experience to continue to serve the mobility needs of the region.